Today's topic is a topic that is on top of mind for us here at Slalom, our clients, many organizations that are represented here today. So we're extremely glad that you chose to spend your morning with us here today. We have a packed agenda. We'll begin with some opening remarks from Jim Rooney, who's the President and CEO of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, followed by Russell Norris, who's General Manager for Slalom New England. We'll then move into the panel discussion with our incredible panelists, and then we'll open up to networking again in the space here. We'll have our AI experts ready to discuss a number of AI topics with you. With that, let's get started. Please join me in welcoming President and CEO of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, Jim Rooney.
Well, that was great. I usually don't get introduced. I'm usually the one that's getting the room quiet and doing the introduction. But I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for hosting us today. So this is the third installment of a chamber event series that we initiated this year around AI. It was something that our board of directors decided was a good thing to do as we thought about this AI revolution and technology revolution that's affecting all of the ways in which we conduct business and live our lives back in 2023 and 2024, and trying to understand the best way for an organization to change it to engage. We decided that using our community power and bringing people together to discuss the ways in which they are thinking about AI, because the truth is we didn't know what the future was going to hold for us and where this was going to take us in our businesses. And even to this day, if you think about it, there's many businesses searching for answers and searching for how others treating this issue in dealing with the issue. And certainly, as you think about applying it, whether it's in life sciences or financial services or in many ways in which technology is being applied, that question of ethics and that question of how best to do it and how to integrate it into the way that we want society to behave is certainly a question on everyone's minds. I was at a forum of chamber presidents from across the country and down in Washington, and there was a presentation on AI that talked about this issue. But one of the interesting data points that the researcher brought forward was that on that question of comfort with AI, trust with AI, there's stark generational differences as well in people in my generation and younger people, and how much they're willing to embrace the changes in the workplace and in their lives. So certainly a topical discussion for all of our members of the chamber, and I want to thank you all for joining us here today. So my job is quite brief. It's to welcome you and to also thank our moderator today, Adam Gutbazal, who graduated from the Chamber's Future Leaders Program and participated in an AI challenge that we had, asking young professionals around the Greater Boston area how they are dealing with and how they're embracing AI in their workplaces. It was an amazing day. I'm sure Adam will reflect on that a little bit. So it's always good, though, for us to see someone who came through our leadership program who now moderates one of our programs. So thank you for doing that. I do want to thank our sponsor, Comcast, who is partnering with the Chamber as the sponsor of this entire series. So we're very grateful to our friends at Comcast. And I want to thank Slalom Consulting for hosting us today. And I'm going to pass it over to Russell Norris, who's the General Manager of Slalom Boston. But, I do confess that, I knew of Slalom, but I wanted to know a little bit more before I come over here, of course. And I want to steal your purpose statement. I don't know if others have had a chance to look at it, but I'll read it. Our purpose is to help people and organizations dream bigger, move faster, and build better tomorrows for all, which is quite moving, I think. It's something that really captures you, and I'm sure for the people that work here is quite a vision and a purpose statement for all of us to have. And the other thing I learned, of course, is that not only is Slalom a global company, but they're in 35 U.S. cities as well, if my count is right. So I did a little bit of a commercial, but come on up, Russell, and maybe you'll give us a little bit more about the company and introduce our panel.
Thank you, Jim. All right, first we're going to do a little bit of an exercise. This isn't a closure exercise, so I can ask you to stand up real quick. This is for all of our panelists. If you're in the back 3 or so rows, I'm going to ask you to find a chair closer to the front and come fill it in so our panelists can feel a little warm. All right, and then you can all sit down. I mean that sincerely. We're going to have an intimate conversation, and I'd love people to be there. And I expect the traffic in Boston, we haven't solved all that, so I expect people to show up a little later. I'd like to make it easy for them to sit down. All right, thank you for joining me in that exercise. Hopefully we feel energized now and happy as well. Are there any? I know there are. Ideators in this room? Thinkers? Anybody? Big idea people? Adam, I know you are. Not raising your hand. People who like to brainstorm? George. Others? All right. We're in the world of AI. How many of you have been to an AI brainstorming session? Thinking about use cases, ideation, what can we do in that space? It starts to get cool. We can do all of these great things. We can move a little further down the chain. What if, what if, what if? How many people remember that moment? Did we go too far? If we were to do that, would we be invading somebody's privacy? You know, there's lawyers in the room. Have we stepped over a legal limit? The idea of where the line is around where value is driven to our people and where ethics comes in is a very critical discussion that we're going to spend some time on today, and all of us need to be thinking about that. I want to share an interesting fact recently. 72% of the global consumers do not trust what companies are doing with their data today. 72%. Good news is 28% do. They should probably be a little less trusting. The reality is we don't know what this path looks like, and there's a lot of concern out there. So this discussion is really valuable. I hope everyone will put something into it and take a lot out of there. So a little bit about, as mentioned, I am the general manager for New England business. I started this business about 13 years ago because I grew up in this town. I love it. I think we've got some of the most innovative people. When I think about what's so special about New England, I think about the education, I think about the investment. I think Boston is the most impactful, smaller city in the world because of the knowledge we have, because of the thought we have in there. If you look at the organizations and the IT and the technology investments going on here, we are leading the way in so many things that this conversation becomes critical. So my job, part of it, is to bring people together and have these important discussions. It's part of what I love about this. And so bringing that forward and how we play in AI is incredibly critical. So we're thrilled to partner with the Boston Chamber today to host this timely event. Really excited as AI rapidly evolves and integrates into every facet of our business and our lives. The ethical considerations surrounding its development and deployment become increasingly critical and challenging. Is it business? Is it dollars? Is it ethics? Is it morals? What's the most important thing as we think about our businesses? But also realize where do you want to work? Okay, there's a lot. How do you think about AI? Do I want to be in an organization that actually uses my data for good? Right? Do I want to be in an organization that thinks carefully about how they put together a process where I can tell them what I want them to do with the data? We have laws, we have rules and regulations that allow us to manage that. We have lots of ways to get around it. So I think today, our conversation should drive us into what different companies doing, and we have fantastic guests. At Slalom, we love to help organizations think about what their future looks like. As Jim shared, it's really about the impact that we can make. We've been down this journey for many years, working with companies to think about the products they develop, how they do their business, how they integrate, and how they can change the world for tomorrow. So I hope today's discussion will be invigorating for you. Hopefully you think a little bit. If you don't walk out here thinking differently about something, we probably didn't do our job. If you walk out thinking that, hey, there's some people I want to connect with more and more, that's what we're here for. Not just Slalom, but everybody in this room. So thank you for committing the time to it. My commitment is it will be valuable and engaging in there. Please enjoy our space, and let me hand off to our tremendous MC. I'm not going to hand off to tremendous MC. I'm going to hand off to Adam, who we've had him for the first time in 15 years. Let me introduce and hand off to Adam to introduce our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Come up and join me. My name is Adam Pipazal. I'm a senior attorney at KP Law, you see down the street. And because you have an attorney, you can tell I'm uptight because I'm one of the few people wearing a tie. I have to do some unnecessary throat clearing, which is anything that is stated here is not the opinion of my law firm or any of my clients. Nothing here constitutes a formal attorney-client relationship. Forgive me for all of that necessary throat clearing that I need to say. I think I can say the same on behalf of Seth as well. Before we get into things, I'd like because I'd like this to be a bit informal. We're going to talk around some things and make sure there's enough time for people to ask questions. So rather than me read off these phenomenal biographies that each of our panelists have, I think it'd be better for them to introduce themselves to you. So we'll start with Seth, if you'd like to. I'll start with myself. Again, I'm a senior attorney at KP Law. I'm a member of various practice groups with the Boston Bar Association, including their privacy and digital law group. I advise both the private sector, from small businesses, large businesses, even to law firms on their use of artificial intelligence. And now being at KP Law, which represents over 100 towns and cities in Massachusetts, I also advise public sector entities on data privacy, proper and improper uses of artificial intelligence with a primary focus in employment law. With that, I'll hand it over to Seth to introduce himself, and then we'll go down to Priya and Kate.
So I'm Seth Oren, and I actually have two different jobs. So one is by training, I'm a lawyer, which is why I'm dressed like this, and also because I thought I was going to wear a tie and I didn't want to stand as a lawyer, I've practiced for many years in the field of kind of the intersection of law and technology. I was very early computer crimes prosecutor around the turn of the century, and I have, in the years since, continued to do a lot of things around hacking and data breaches and privacy issues. A few years ago, however, I mostly left being a lawyer, although I continue to retain association with Donovan & Fisher in Boston, but most of my job now is a consulting company called Ethical Compass Advisors, and we advise companies on sort of the ethical implications of the technology they use. We started by creating the Facebook Oversight Board for Facebook with Meta on sort of how they can fairly address content moderation. We've done similar, different kinds of work for other large tech companies dealing with kind of unexpected technological or the ethical problems that arose from the technology they created. And then we got invited by Anthropic, which is one of the big AI makers, to do a project for them, helping them think through what ethical AI meant for them and how they could create governance systems to ensure that their AI was ethical. That got us into the AI space, I guess. And now we continue to work with clients implementing AI and thinking through how what they should be worried about in terms of the ethical implications of AI for them.
Hi, no time. My name is Priya Krishnan, and I'm the Chief Digital and Transformation Officer at Bright Horizons. I've been with Bright Horizons for about 5 years, and a big part of the journey that we're going through from a transformation standpoint is how do we get access to the incredible services that we offer to families who have the need. Really what Bright Horizons does is provides education and care services across all life stages, from the early years to the elder years. And we work with 1,400 clients and serve close to 10 million families through them. So the idea of saying how do we, in times like this when there is both uncertainty across the globe, but also awareness of the fact that care and education is paramount for people to be anchored at home, for them to be professionally successful, thinking about how we provide both access and meet consumers where they are. So I sit on the other side, which is trying to figure this out like you guys in terms of where does the AI journey begin and end, where does the privacy journey begin, how do we as custodians of these data for not only families but their dependents treat them with the respect and the dignity that they have provided us that data with. So in some ways I've sat at your end of the spectrum in many sessions, and I'm sitting here to really sort of collaborate and share how we're thinking about this, and hopefully we collectively talk about this and learn from each other.
Hi there, Kate Reichenbach, and as you can see, I'm wearing jeans, which reflects our company's fintech focus. Trying to go with the vibes. I'm in a unique position, so I'll give a little bit of my background. So I work for a company called Wax. I'm currently here, actually moving to London, but currently here in Boston. We're based in Portland, Maine, about 6,500 employees and 2.6 billion in revenue. I, until January, led our company's AI strategy, working very closely across legal risk, compliance, product tech, all of the functions, as well as some of our innovation efforts. Those digital very much tie in the like. Started a new role in January where I'm now GM of our European mobility business unit. So it's a very interesting, I went from leading a central strategy function to then having a business unit with a P&L where the AI efforts are directly in my business. What do I want to do and what does that mean for the customer? So have a unique lens as we go through some of it. It will definitely reflect kind of my two hats there.
Great, thank you. And a demonstration of just how modest this panel is, some things they didn't tell you about themselves. Kate also had leadership roles at Rockport Company, founded Deloitte and Bank of America before moving to West, huge leadership roles. Priya was one of the founders of India's leading childcare organization with over 150 different locations. Seth has also taught cybercrime law and procedure at Harvard. And myself, I am very good at laughing at my own jokes. So, speaking of which, what I tend to find is a very good icebreaker when it comes to AI discussions and panels is I asked ChatGPT for a joke on this topic. And I think this is a good way to set the stage. I put in the prompt, I'm moderating a panel at Solomon Consulting about AI ethics. Please give me a joke to start the session. Here's the joke. I asked an AI to write a joke about ethics and plagiarized one, took full credit, and then tried to sell me a subscription. So rest assured, we all will still have jobs, at least in comedy. But I do think it's important if we're going to have a discussion about AI that we set the stage, because AI means so many different things to different people. And so for us to have this robust discussion, I think it would be important, we go around the horn and start with you, Kate, on when you hear somebody talking about AI, especially in a business context, what do you understand that term to mean when you're looking to consider ethical issues or problem solving?
I'll start with what AI is not. It's not a silver bullet. AI can't take my kids to school. It can't buy my husband's birthday present tomorrow that I have not yet purchased.
Not yet.
12 hours. And AI can't go into my calendar and predict the best meetings I should attend for the next year and tell me where to meet and when. There are a lot of things that AI can't do and should not do. The way I look at AI, and Wax as well, is that AI is a set of tools. AI alone is not a strategy. It's a set of tools that allow us to better analyze data, use that data for decisions, and then act upon it within the right ethical and responsible bounds. So it's a way to do things better and faster to better serve our customers and drive value for the company.
And Priya, when you at Bright Horizons or people talk about AI, leveraging AI, what do you understand that term to mean?
So I think, one would lead myself by saying that 30 years ago when I did a computer engineering course, I had a course on AI and robotics, so it isn't new, it isn't, again, a silver bullet that's going to change things. I do think AI is very much part of our lives. When you're voice recording a text, that is AI. When your car is sort of bringing you onto a path, that is AI. So the fact that there are variations of this, which is from predictive analytics to machine learning to AI, which is really doing things which humans could do, and then it increases in its risk profile when people blend AI and generative AI, which is the buzzword right now, is a version of generative AI where AI is creating the content and allowing humans to moderate it. And then the other end of the extreme is really, agents, autonomous agents who could technically replace humans. And so the way we are thinking about AI at Bright Horizons is really saying, how do we think about it along the three levels that we typically use technology for, which is efficiency gains, effectiveness gains, and enablement gains, right? So I'm happy to go through that as we progress, but we've kept it under the lens of how we thought about technology enablement and not sort of treated this as something entirely different. It does have different ramifications, but that's sort of been our approach to how we think.
So I agree with what everyone said, so rather than repeat it, I'm going to say something somewhat different, which is, I think one of the funny things about AI is that if you go back 20, 30 years and you think about what people thought about AI then, people would keep setting benchmarks, like when a computer can beat someone at chess, that's AI, right? And then someone built a computer that could beat someone at chess, and everyone said, that's not AI, right? Like Go, if they could beat someone at Go, that would be AI, right? And again, it finally happened, and people were like, that wasn't it. And then ChatGPT came out, and everyone said, that's it. And I'm not sure they were right then or now. I think that generative AI is what a lot of people think people mean when they say AI, and it is an incredibly interesting and powerful tool. I think we'll find that in some ways it's not AI also. When we think about it a little while, I think we'll probably again set the bar a little higher at some point. Maybe we'll get to the point where everyone agrees we've achieved whatever we need by at least artificial general intelligence. But I think we're not there yet. But there's certainly a lot to work with. It's gotten much more mainstream now. And then what I think is also funny is that now that AI is like a hot new thing, everyone's doing the opposite of what they did in the days of AI chess, which is everything is AI now, right? So any company doing anything, they're like, oh, it's AI, right? And half the time it's just the same algorithm we were using, 3 years ago when nobody thought it was AI then. No, it probably was. And now we're saying everything is.
So I think we heard essentially in the same bucket a comparable definition or understanding of AI, that there's perception, there's reality, and there's perceived reality. And so how do businesses square the fact that you as a business have one understanding of what AI is, but perhaps your employees, or perhaps even more importantly, consumers, have a different understanding? So how do you cross that bridge of trying to convey to an employee or to a client what technology you are, or as you said, or not using? And how do you start that discussion, or how do you deal with the PR component of that? Sure.
So I do want to differentiate internal versus external. So I view it as our responsibility, all the leaders of Wax and frankly all the employees of Wax, it's our responsibility to learn about AI in the right balance. So Wax has actually a ton of support from our CEO, board, et cetera, top down for our strategy, and took a very specific people stream of work is the best way to put it. So set up bounds for our employees where they could experiment, where we said, no, sorry, there's a line here. Hired a AI and Gen AI coach to sit amongst our employees for where they have questions. Set up, I have it here, an AI accelerators program. My goal is everyone becomes an accelerator at Wax. It starts with a tranche of first movers, and those are the people who truly want to use the tools embedded in our products and services within the right bounds, and then teach others what that means. So internally, we've gone with it, education. Educate first, allow experimentation in a very safe, responsible, ethical way. So there are very much balance. It is not a free-for-all. We are not a startup. But how do we make sure everyone's aware of the right guidelines and policies, and we do also give them the right room to experiment. Well, I'll let you all comment. Yeah, I feel very passionate. Go ahead.
I think ours is a similar approach where we've taken an educational view. Like I said, there are 3 buckets in which we would think of AI playing a role, like we would think of technology playing a role. One is around efficiency, which is what are the use cases within the organization where we just gain efficiency on account of the fact that AI can help us. So call summarization is a good example. Instead of human typing things out, but you have like meeting summarization and call summarization. That's an efficiency gain. It allows us to unlock capacity for us to be doing different things. The second is around effectiveness, so insights from the data, and that could be for both structured and unstructured data. So talking about here, what is the art of the possible, and if we were to think about a unified view of the consumer, which is very important in our business, given we're an accumulation of all businesses. And really what both clients and consumers want is to be served as a unit of one and with specific needs. So how can AI help us become effective in that, and how can technology help us become effective in that? And the third is around the customer experience and how we can actually engage and meet people where they are. So I don't think anybody wakes up and says, I want to reach the contact center of a company, or I want to figure out how to reach this company. People are used to self-serving. They want to be able to chat with somebody. They want to be able to text somebody. And in some scenarios, they want to interact with. So meeting a consumer where they are and identifying how you create a personalized experience, the customer experience part is the third place where we're using. We are taking a very slow, measured approach. So where it's externally facing, we tend to say let's do out the internal use cases, let's make sure that it works for us before we take it out externally. So our strategy has been to say, let's think about all the internal use cases around efficiency before we take it into the experiential layer or into the effectiveness layer, which is really the insights layer for us as right.
So when I work with clients on sort of how they think about AI ethics for them, I also have a very strong distinction between internal and external, that's inevitably, which is, I think in the ethics space in AI, a lot of time and energy is spent thinking about either various catastrophic things that might happen in our future, or very micro problems that might happen sooner, but maybe are very focused on a particular situation. And what I think companies need to do is really think through what is the risk, both from a legal perspective or an ethical perspective, of a particular use case. And that's going to vary wildly. So obviously internal uses are usually less risky, if only because you're dealing with employees you presumably need to talk to and smooth over something that's terribly wrong. And it's very different with your customers. If it's outside facing, the risk of reputational problems is much, much higher. The risk of any mistake that's made, which you might end up having to eat, is much higher when it's external or internal. And all of those things sort of need to be thought about. And I think it makes a huge difference how exactly you're using it. And it's not just about the internally external, it's also what are you letting it do? Are you letting it represent you? And if you let the AI talk as if it's you, if you're using generative AI, that's a wildly different scenario than if it's trying to get you the right person at the call center. It might be wrong in the call center case, but that happens and people deal with it. If it's representing you in some way and making representations about this is what we do, you got a problem on your hands if it's wrong.
My favorite example is the Chevrolet dealer in California that was a truck that was market value $76,000. The person was negotiating with an AI-powered chatbot that agreed to sell it to the person for $1. Now, you'd be shocked to hear that the dealership didn't follow through with that deal, unfortunately. But imagine the PR stuff. This is a dealership that Chevrolet did not want that kind of PR, although it was trying to find certain efficiencies. I was trying to enable, Priya, I'm going to jump back to you on this because I love the idea of the 3 E's, right? The efficiency, the effectiveness, and the enablement. But you also have to, the people here have learned about the 4th E, which is the ethics. And so how is it that you can make this a cube, if you will, as opposed to a triangle, and you have to take one out to throw in ethics? So how are you able to be efficient, effective, and enable while also still being ethical in your use of AI?
I don't think there's a needed solve for it. It is being mindful about it and thinking about it. The difference, I'm to a non-answer before I get to the specific answer, so indulge me for 1 minute. The fact is that unlike technology, which has been enabling and making us effective or efficient, the federated nature of what's happening with AI, generative AI, and autonomous agents is what is the scary element, which is, would somebody within Greg Rison's to become more efficient, write up, use ChatGPT and put sensitive material onto ChatGPT and it gets posted into the ether where we can't trace it, right? So the conversation around where are the boundaries and how do we create both governance and frameworks to say how can people operate within the structure. So I don't think ethics is ethics at the individual level, ethics at the organization level, and ethics when you're thinking about external entities like your employers, your shareholders, and your consumers. So at the individual level, a lot of it is being done by education, saying here is what you could do when you decide to put things out in the ether. We do restrict use of AI outside of technology that we have approved. So as an organization, how we deal with that is to say we will buy technology and use technology where we know that the data is within our environment and is not being used to train an LLM, which might work against us. We block it through things like IOS to say people can't use AI within the environment. But the shadow AI, I call it a shadow AI movement, which is people can use these on their personal devices. They could do it within their homes. And so to that extent, continually repeating and being boringly repetitive about the consequences of what you could be doing and what it has on the organization is really critical. So that's the approach we've taken. I don't think we've cracked the code on what this means when we're talking about consumers. Our strategy has been broadly around saying how do we want to treat the consumer, and again, I'll talk through that when we're talking about consumers and clients, saying what do they come to us for and how do we keep that as a North Star and make AI be in service of that has been our approach so far and it's continued to go. I'd love to actually hear what Seth has to say because he's the expert at the top.
Yeah, so I think I'd like to sort of do the two sides of the coin here because although we have different definitions of AI, you would think that everybody has the same definition of ethics, but in a business context, ethics can vary. You know, in the legal context, ethics versus use of data or consumer ethics. And so I'd love to hear Kate and then Seth, because I've heard Seth, he has a great explanation of the two different types of ethics, but we'll let Kate talk first, and then you can chime in.
So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing. You're welcome to critique this as we go through, but to your original question of how does ethics fit in kind of the AI strategy or use cases, it's non-negotiable. And so I think of it as an umbrella. Is that we're saying we're driving internal efficiency, we're driving innovation in our products, we're driving internal use of tools for employee efficiency. All of that, the governance of that is incredibly important, which involves ethics around AI. And so at WEX, what we've done is, in my previous role, frankly, became best friends with really good lawyers, risk, compliance, infosec, name it, right? Anyone who needs to be involved. We started an AI governance committee and a framework and said, these are the bounds in which this company feels comfortable playing. And so different levels of risk, different levels of opportunity to get to the right framework and assessment to do so. I think you build it into your processes. The goal is not to have a risk or legal or compliance person in every single call, but the goal is to say, okay, we have an innovation process. At what point, honestly, we've already always done this, at what point do you need those key partners involved to make sure as you innovate your products or your experiences, you're doing so with customer needs in mind, but also the right value for the company, the right viability of that. And so, honestly, we took what we already had and added in the AI layer. So it wasn't anything super materially different. We set up a governance committee specific to AI and Gen AI advancements and improvements so we can continually assess those. But it was kind of our ways of work. To your point, AI is not new. We took our ways of working and improved them in service to ethical AI.
So I think it is actually worth, as Adam said, pointing out that when people use the term AI ethics, they actually are often talking about two different things. Before we even get what meaning ethics is, just meaning AI ethics. So one is particularly the makers of the large language models like OpenAI or Anthropic or XAI or the others, is like their question is the AI itself ethical? In other words, if you ask the AI, I'd like to murder my grandmother, how could I do that? Is it going to give you an answer, or is it going to say, maybe you shouldn't murder your grandmother, right? Or something a lot worse than that, right? And so those companies are spending a lot of time and money in a lot of different ways, partly through red teaming, which is essentially getting people to like get the AI to say something that it's say, setting up systems to get it to not say things it's not supposed to. Essentially, so that if people use AI, the AI itself won't direct them to do something unethical. I think this is going to be a fascinating and ongoing process. I mean, one problem, of course, is that at least on a purely theoretical level, the theoretically perfect AI is trained on what people actually do and tries to imitate what people do, right? And it will do it perfectly. And if we really achieve that ever, what we'll find is that people do not always act ethically, and the AI will not either, right? You know, they have certainly done tests with AI where they trained an AI to do trading, like you would have to do at an investment firm. And then they fed the AI inside information. And although the AI was told that you can't use inside information, when the AI then traded on the inside information, which it did, and was asked, why did you trade on the inside information? The AI did exactly what a person would do. I would say this is someone who's been a lawyer for many years, which is it lied, right? It said, I did that for these reasons that had nothing to do with the fact that they knew the inside information, right? And why did the AI do that? Because that's what a person would do, right? So it had perfectly imitated people, and it was not ethical, right? So that's one form of AI ethics, is the AI ethical. A second form, which probably matters way more to, I suspect, everyone in the room, but certainly everyone who's not actually making large language models, is the way we're using this AI ethical. In other words, does this fit with our companies, with our goals, with our risk mitigation strategies? And that is a totally different question. And it would be naive to think that you could just outsource that to OpenAI and they'll promise you that everything will work out ethically. It's not going to work that way. You need OpenAI to do a good job, right? You don't want your AI to be tricking people, right? But if you're going to use an AI, for example, as a sales assistant, right, it might be very, very good at it. It might be so good at it as to be unethical, right? Like there are plenty of unethical salespeople, and there's no reason to think that AI couldn't imitate that, right? That's on you, the company that's using the AI, less than it is on OpenAI, and that's something that you're going to have to figure out. And then so in this context, I think, when we're talking about ethical AI, we're mostly talking about companies' use of AI, and are they implementing it in a way that does attempt to mitigate those risks of unethical or illegal behavior, and how do they think about that?
So an anecdote I like to use to distinguish those two types of AI ethics, and we'll do a quick poll, and this is judgment-free. Let's use the period of 2012 to 2015. Raise your hand if you had an iPhone during that time, which was the launch of Siri. Okay. And again, judgment-free. Raise your hand if during that time you ever asked Siri, where do I hide the bodies? Does anybody recall this? It was a joke thing that you could do, and you could ask Siri, hey, Siri, where do I hide the bodies? And it would show you where a dump or a transfer station was, or show you where a gas station was. This was a question of AI ethics. Should Siri have actually provided genuine locations when it did that? And it did for a period of time. Now it stopped doing that. Does anybody want to hazard a guess as to why it stopped doing that? Because somebody was actually hiding the bodies at places where Siri ate them. So that would be the improper use, the ethical use of AI. So humans were phenomenal creatures, and we have a tendency to not be able to get out of our own way. And so let's say, I mean, we've heard a lot about what our businesses are doing. Let's say we take Jones Smith Incorporated, developing company, just had a great round of fundraising and starting to use AI. How would we advise that company on what guardrails they should consider? I mean, Kate, you talked about the guardrails that it's already had and has continued to use, but let's take an example of a company that is just starting, somebody's come to them and say, hey, we should leverage this with AI. What are the foundational things they should be doing?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. One, as a new company, you might have slightly higher risk tolerance, transparently, but understanding, I think it gets to a use case perspective. Exactly what you're saying is, what are the use cases? Let's start with the customer. What are you selling? What are you providing? What value are you providing for the customer? And then how are you using AI to enhance that? And use case by use case, what's the associated business ethical risk, all alike? And then that's where it's an internal discussion between legal risk, compliance, the business leaders, et cetera, is what level of risk is that particular company willing to take? And obviously risk tolerances are different across the board. But it's having that right kind of centralized, and it can be lightweight. It doesn't have to be a huge fancy model, but lightweight assessment model for what you're willing to do with the customer in mind. You're ultimately trying to solve a customer's unmet need with the product, and how do you do so in the best ethical way possible.
Let's say, again, you were crazy enough to want to develop another childcare company. God bless you.
Been there. I think so I'm very cool with these, which was if the North Star of the company is consumer and client centricity. I mean, most consumers, I break this into two parts. One is what are you working towards? It's an unmet need for customers, and most customers say, know me, reach me, show me, delight me, right? And use my data with a sense of responsibility because I'm giving it to you, knowing that you will need it responsibly. So that's on the consumer side. On the organizational side, I do think when a company starts up, there are a set of values with which you start up, and being really clear on what is negotiable and what is not negotiable. The fact that fraud is not negotiable in a company is something that you start off with. And so how do you treat that in the human context, and how do you treat that in the technology context, and how do you create guardrails around it? So, Seth's earlier comment, which was really enlightening in terms of the ethics of AI and then the context in which you're using it. How do you train these models to behave the way you would anticipate yourself to behave? It's exactly the way you would train a human and sort of create those boundaries. So your values and the principle with which you want to operate, if you want your people to operate, is really what applies to your technology environment as well. Given the federated nature, you need to create boundaries and ring fence these in. Using your North Star of why you started the company, what a consumer and a client wants, and then the values with which you want to operate, I think become a guiding principle for how you get your AI to function within your environment. There isn't a golden answer there, but I think keeping those two North Stars is helpful.
I'll just add something quickly, which is I think one of the other things that companies should always think about is what's your risk mitigation strategy, right? Like AI is going to be wrong sometimes, just like people are wrong sometimes, right? And you already have systems in place to deal with the fact that sometimes your employees will be wrong, right? And you might want to think that you want those systems or some systems that imitate that for AI. So if you have a call center, you already listen in on calls every so often because sometimes call center employees say what you think they're not supposed to, right? And it wouldn't be crazy to set, maybe not listening in, but some function that does something similar if your AI is taking over a lot of that role. It becomes an AI chatbot, for example. Because, again, you want to know what's going on, and you want to know what's going on before it ends up on front page of the newspaper, not after, right? It's much easier to fix it if you can fix it quickly before it's public. And we already do that throughout all of business. What's, I think, troubling for people to get their heads around with AI is that in the pre-AI world of computers, right, you did something with a computer and you got a result, and you did it over and over again, you did the same result over and over again. So we had a confidence that we could test something and if it was working, it's going to work every time. And generative AI doesn't work that way, and it's going to sometimes do different answers to different questions, and therefore, just like people do, right, you're going to have to put in systems that kind of put guardrails around that, so you know what's going on, and don't just assume that because it's working, the testing is always going to work again.
Yeah, I think it's paramount. What I heard in all three of those answers is, Kate, you started this all by saying it's not a silver bullet, right? This is not a problem solver, and to bring it to that point, you have to understand what your business purpose is, right? AI is not going to be a problem solver or efficiencies if you don't understand what your mission is, what your statement is, what your goal as a company is. You can't find efficiencies if you don't understand what you're actually trying to do, which is something that personally I advise companies. If you can't answer the who, what, where, when, why, and how, not just of your business, but your AI use, you should not be leveraging AI yet. So I'd like to segue a little bit to transparency with respect to use. I think Russell had a very important statistic with that 72% of consumers do not trust how they either know or perceive their data to be used in AI models and AI systems. And so what is a way that a company can dispel these myths, provide a transparent use, and I guess we're really talking external here, meaning that a consumer is using the data, not internal as employees are using AI systems, but how could, and we'll start with you, Seth, how can a company provide a transparent use of AI that might get that, 28% trust up to, a whopping 33%?
So to be a little contrary, I'm not sure that the answer is clear. I think what companies are starting to do, and obviously what you should do, is if there's an AI involved, you should make clear to people that it is. And it should be prominently stated that people should know it. I suspect, however, that it's not really going to work. And certainly if the goal is to increase that 72% number, I don't think it's going to work to do that. For the same reason that we now have, 20 years ago, when you were thinking about how you should use customer data, before there were a whole bunch of laws that told you how you were supposed to use customer data, right? Companies kind of did what they wanted, and in theory, they told people what they did, right? And that was more or less all you had to do, right? And it totally didn't work. And it didn't work because nobody reads privacy policies, even those of us who've written them don't read them, right? And no one has any idea what's in there. And anyway, companies are constantly changing them, so they're kind of meaningless, right? And I fear that the same thing is going to happen with AI. We'll start slapping a label on it saying AI inside, right? And everyone's going to glaze over and say, okay, because what choice do they have? And everyone just clicks through and it has no real meaning. So look, I think you need to do it. I don't mean to poo-poo it, but I definitely do not think that it is a silver bullet to anything. I think if we're serious about companies, I guess, regaining trust of consumers and how they use their data, that's probably not where I would start, though I strongly suspect it's where the law is going to end up being. So,
So Kate, this is why when you said you have friends who are lawyers, I raised my eyebrow, because we often are very good at getting elbows raised at parties with those kind of contrarian views. So what would you say on transparent use?
I don't disagree with what you're saying by any means, actually, but I think first, there's legal and regulatory risks, right? By the time things have been regulated, it's almost too late. Enough people have done things wrong and incorrectly for the regulators to stand up and regulate it. So I think, yes, we have to, as a company, or in kind of my GM hat here, 100% we have to have the right GDPR in Europe, T's and C's, disclosures around AI. But that's baseline. That's baseline level. So transparently, we're still figuring it out. We're trying to understand. In the past, you didn't need to tell someone that you used some machine learning algorithm to answer a basic question that was RPA mined from this database to this one. Like it hasn't been. We're trying to figure out the right balance, and we're erring on the side of caution. I would rather tell you more and rather give you the information so you know what we're doing and where we're using your data and how you have the ability to opt out. That's the key here. Putting the decision rights back in the customer and consumer's hand to opt out of us using your data for whatever we might be using in an explicit way. So we're still working through it, right? Like we're going to make sure that we do everything from a regulatory and legal standpoint. But when it comes to customer trust, if I lose a customer's trust, I don't have business tomorrow. And so how do we take the right legal regulatory provisions, but how do we do this in the right way to make sure that I don't lose that customer's trust? And so I don't mean for it to be a non-answer in that sense. It's very use case specific. But in looking at that, at anything we release, any product we have, it's not just about the T's and C's, it's about the trust. And I'll actually bring Priya into this from Bright Horizons is I'm a customer of Bright Horizons. So I have 3 kids and I trust Bright Horizons. 1, the caregivers and the facilities to care for my children, and then 2, whether it's using backup dependency care or any of that, their online systems, I trust that my data is protected. All the information I put in about my children is not going to become public domain knowledge all of it in sudden or used for some other purpose because I trust Bright Horizons as a company. And so, we can talk kind of how you've gotten there, but I think it comes down to what do you need in the details, T's and C's and the like, to ensure you have trust. And it's potentially, in most cases, more than what is just regulated.
It's always nice to meet consumers and few of you. But it is, in our case, I think, the journey of being internal, the body go external, is a big part of how we're thinking about it. One area that so the internal versus external is how do we get the efficiency gain of the call summarization, the effectiveness gain of saying a teacher whose first spoken language is not English can actually use a translator to do the notes for the child. So both of those are use cases which are internal. But what we've done is, and I would say that we've perfected this, but what we've tried to do specifically as we're implementing AI is to say, put a feedback loop in and stay in touch with the feedback. Like, it's one thing to say, let me record whether this was thumbs up or thumbs down, which a lot of bots, etc. will do. But then how are you using that to then train the AI to become more efficient? And that's a process in itself, like creating the feedback loop and continuing to edit your, the prompts as well as the language learning model is an art, and that's the journey that we're on. I think we're slightly further away from taking this out externally because, it is that trust, when it is people, their children, and their loved ones. The last thing we want to do is for them, to say, we don't trust you anymore, we're not going to leave that data. So I think that's the journey that we're on.
So I have one last question for the panel. I want to leave a little bit of time in case people have questions. Kate, following up on you about trust. I'm curious for each of you, what role, if any, you believe companies have on educating consumers about AI, about the technology, about potential uses, and the pros and cons, so that consumers are better consumers, or do you believe that that's not a company's responsibility?
It is, but let me take that in a more nuanced fashion. So if I am, to your point about, if I'm OpenAI or Anthropic, I am a customer of theirs as a corporation. And I believe it is their responsibility to help us understand their models, or I'm not going to use it. Like, I'm not going to build on top of OpenAI if I don't trust what they're doing. So that's from a more platform foundational perspective. From my perspective at Wax, it's always my job to educate the customer consumer. What is the product they have? What's the value I'm providing you with this product? And how does it work for you to get the most value out of it? And so I think, give a more specific example, we have, to describe our business in a little more detail, imagine you are a 18-mil trucker, or you are a Winston Flowers here in Boston, and you have 10 or 15 vans and as part of a fleet to deliver your flowers. We are both the fuel cards, so you'll get discounts within our fuel network if you use our card, and then we also have a suite of mobility software solutions around that. And so it certainly take the software, it's certainly our responsibility and job to educate consumers and customers, in our case, maybe how you use the software and what value it provides them, and then disclosure where effective of AI. I don't think it's our job to teach the entire world about what AI is, but within the context of our product, if we are using AI to enhance their experience, that should be a part of the general customer-consumer education, because it increases the value they're going to get out of their product if they understand the benefits that come from our use of AI in that product.
Yeah, and I actually really like the way you framed it, which is, we also treat it similarly when it's a B2B context. We stay a lot more connected, explaining to our clients where we intend to use AI. That's almost contractually required. So because some of our clients are very large financial institutions, they are healthcare institutions, so they do need to know how we're using the technology broadly, and then AI more specifically, and we will keep them appraised. With consumers, we've taken a more, we will seek permission and allow you the opportunity to opt out, but it's built into our privacy language and into our data infrastructure. I think for us it's not really, let's educate the consumers, that's very critical journey. We have to educate consumers about our products, not about how we use AI, so we've taken a client approach slightly different.
And my guess is that the easiest way to to educate consumers to use AI for your products is going to be when it's obvious to the consumer why this helps them as opposed to why it's helping you. And as a simple example of these, like, you know, if we go back a very long time, like 4 years, the introduction of the ATM, there were people who definitely wanted to still go and talk to tellers, right? But most people, certainly most people below a certain age, like quickly realized that the ATM was way faster and way better than the teller. Right? And while that may have benefited banks, I'm sure it did, like from my perspective as a user, I wanted to use an ATM rather than talk to a teller because it was faster and better for me. Right? So it was much easier for me to then feel like I was invested in learning that. By contrast, I think perhaps the early versions of automating phone trees were infuriating. And I think people really felt like, you know, I'm on this because you won't get someone to answer the phone. And that makes me very angry. And by the time I got the person, I was probably put out. It got me better for now. But in the early versions, I think that, so that was probably an example of something that it's a lot harder to educate your consumers to use it. They feel like it's not really working. And you're doing it to save your money rather than their time.
Can I add to that? Because I think Priya and I probably have a similar stance on this. Is that's where infusing this in your software development cycles is paramount. So we go from a pilot test through, you know, alpha, beta, before. A lot of time passes between an idea and validation of that idea before we go for a general release or a scale past a, you know, MVP type product. And we use that process to understand what customers want and need and how to educate them when we do finally release a bigger launch and go to market. So I think it's paramount that you build it into your innovation cycles or your development cycles to your point, to get to a place where you are providing the right customer value and it's not perceived as, oh, you're just doing this to save the company money. That is not our goal with AI, it's customer value.
Thank you all very much. I'm going to give a quick round of applause for our we have a couple minutes. If anybody has any questions, there's going to be some networking. So if you have specific questions you want to ask specific people, you may do it then, but I'll open the floor to a couple questions.
One question.
One question. Here, I'll pass my microphone.
My question was, do you think there are ever a time when there's like a use case that you just like, you have to tell people, no, we should not use AI for that, and how do you go about like making, how do you go get, basically someone's really excited about this idea and you're like, that, I don't think you can make that ethical. How do you go about like asking them, answering, like telling them that?
Aside from the movie Her.
I can give a very direct answer. We have decided to not use AI in hiring positions. So there is not an agentized experience. Maybe we'll use AI to extract some data, but like we're not going to use AI to say this is the person to hire. It should not be the decision engine, other than kind of helping distill information together based on profiles. And so we have solidified that in our AI governance model. I think to your point, like what's negotiable, what's not negotiable, and where's the gray area. I would say most of it falls into, we don't think we want to do this, but let's negotiate, like let's talk it through. There are very few areas where we've straight out said in our governance, this is a no, because we want to have a constructive conversation, even though it is likely a no. And there are just a very few, there are some areas though where we said we as a company don't feel comfortable at this point in time. We'll continue to reassess as the technology matures.
I think in our case, it's, I mean, we also set these guardrails around, you know, this is our tech stack, so we use Microsoft and Salesforce, and they, in a sense, are innovating, and we're almost sort of riding on their coattails. And so those two are areas that we said people have to broadly use. So that sort of directs people, saying you don't get to bring 10 different tools into the system, and we will permission you to use them. The second area is we've been very, very clear about the fact that our strategy right now is human in the loop. So the notion of autonomous agents and generative AI, even without human in the loop to review, has also brought clarity in terms of saying that, okay, this is at least the ring-fenced area that people can work in, and I think that's helped our technology and our product teams to come in and ask the questions of, does it flout these two rules? Simple rules, but they still sort of know where they can operate, and that's the end.
And if I were to answer that question, I would actually bifurcate into two issues, which is my two hats, I guess, which is the legal issue and ethical issue. The legal issue, I think, is that it's easy to say there's no rules around AI right now because no one's regulating it, which is mostly true, not totally true, but mostly true. However, there are a ton of rules that regulate a whole bunch of other things you do, and many of them will implicate AI, right? So employment is a good one, right? There are a whole lot of rules around employment, and just because you're using an AI and the AI is violating those rules, that's not going to help you legally. Like the AG's offices are not going to think that's an excuse. So there are things where you can say the AI just can't do it because it's going to end up probably creating legal problems for us that we can't solve. That's one set of problems. The ethical issue, I would say, is in those areas where there is not yet regulation or laws that actually implicate it, there may be things that are so potentially catastrophic to your business that it's just not worth the risk at the moment. So for example, if you ran a suicide hotline, I'm not sure chatbots are ready to talk people down from suicide because every so often will pop some up. And you could just say, you know what, we just can't do that. It's way too risky. If you were trying to have it compare 3 models of cars, maybe that issue is less severe since it gets it wrong, maybe it doesn't matter as much. So I think that would be the other one, is this potential downside so catastrophic that it's not worth the risk? There will be some uses like that, and those are worth considering even if there aren't laws that are doing it.
I'm going to jump in, I'm going to answer the question as well, because why not? I will say, again, looking in an employment context, anytime I'm advising companies, this is not something we really touched on, but something that is really blossoming is the use of facial recognition software, especially in the employment process, whether it's in hiring, promotional, or even monitoring employees. And I caution any company that lets use that technology to have a firm understanding of why they're using it, how they're monitoring it, and how they're auditing the data, because there are a number of issues. It can get into bias and discrimination, not acknowledging a person who may have autism, for example. There are issues about whether or not it's verifying authenticity, reported authenticity, and it's becoming more commonplace than people realize. So that's enough to, I think, terrify you all and have us back for another discussion another time. I really want to thank the Chamber for including us as part of their AI Advantage series, to Slalom for hosting us, to our phenomenal panelists, and to all of you for attending, and Comcast for